Shares of Walmart fell as much as 5% Thursday morning, after executives said the retail giant, known for its advertising of low prices, will have to start raising them later this month due to the high cost of tariffs. The announcement is a clear signal that U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war is filtering through to the American economy, even to a company noted for its ability to manage costs more aggressively than rivals to keep prices low. Walmart also declined to provide a profit forecast for the second quarter, even as the company's U.S. comparable sales surpassed expectations in the first quarter.
That's not speculation, it's Walmart, sounding the alarm. Today we're uncovering how America's biggest retailer just spilled the truth about tariffs, and things only get worse from here. Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing the very steel in your car, the wind turbine powering your city, even the packaging for your everyday products, all just doubled in cost overnight. That's not a distant possibility. It's happening right now. The US government has quietly unleashed a tariff shockwave, 50% duties slapped on over 400 critical imports worth nearly $200 billion. These aren't luxury items or optional gadgets. We're talking about the hidden building blocks of the economy: EV batteries, auto parts, wind energy components, and industrial packaging. In other words, the silent backbone of America's supply chain just got a financial sledgehammer. But here's the kicker: while Washington frames this as a strategic strike against foreign competition, inside boardrooms and on factory floors, executives are panicking. Because if these tariffs stay in place, they won't just reshape trade, they could quietly unravel entire industries, drive inflation into overdrive, and leave US businesses scrambling to survive. And that's exactly why insiders are calling this the most dangerous economic gamble of 2025. So the real question is this: are these tariffs the masterstroke America needs, or the trigger for the next economic meltdown? Stick with me, because the numbers, the contradictions, and the fallout you're about to see will make you question everything you thought you knew about trade policy. And it starts with a single, shocking fact. Here's the part that almost no one is talking about: these tariffs don't just target foreign competitors. They hit American companies first. Take EV batteries, for example. The US has been pouring billions into electric vehicle manufacturing, promising to bring jobs back home and reduce reliance on foreign energy. Sounds good on paper, right? But the harsh reality is that almost every EV battery depends on imported components, from cathodes to electrolytes, that now face a crushing 50% tax at the border. That means Tesla, Ford, GM, Rivian, even startups trying to innovate, all just had their costs explode overnight. And when production costs rise by tens of billions across an industry, you know exactly where those costs end up, in the final sticker price that consumers pay. The same applies to wind energy. The US has committed to ambitious renewable energy goals, but wind turbines require specialized metals, blades, and electronic controls, almost none of which are produced at scale inside the US. With tariffs now slicing straight into those imports, the green revolution is being throttled by its own government's policy. Imagine cities that were budgeting for massive renewable projects suddenly realizing their costs just ballooned by 20, 30, even 40%. Those projects either stall, get delayed, or collapse entirely. So instead of weakening foreign rivals, the US might actually be weakening its own climate strategy. And let's talk about consumer goods. It's easy to think tariffs only touch heavy industry, but buried in that list of 407 categories are items you'd never expect: cosmetic packaging, small electronics, machine parts for appliances. These may sound trivial, but they aren't. Because when Walmart, Target, and Home Depot all source products that rely on these parts, the math gets ugly fast. One major retailer has already warned investors that price adjustments are inevitable, corporate speak for, get ready to pay more. Inflation, which many hoped was cooling off, could roar right back into the headlines, powered not by consumer demand but by government policy. Here's the contradiction that makes this moment so dangerous: the White House insists these tariffs will protect American workers. But the industries hit hardest are the very ones Washington has been trying to nurture: clean energy, electric cars, advanced manufacturing. It's like fueling the fire with one hand while trying to put it out with the other. And this isn't just theory, Wall Street has already started reacting. Analysts are warning that corporate margins are set to shrink, stock prices for auto and renewable companies are tumbling, and manufacturers are quietly lobbying for exemptions. But the exemptions process is slow, messy, and riddled with politics. So if this policy is supposed to strengthen America, why are America's most critical industries now bracing for impact? And what happens when trading partners decide to strike back with tariffs of their own? That's where the story takes an even darker turn. Now here's where the real storm brews: retaliation. Tariffs rarely exist in isolation. Every time the US slaps a new duty, trading partners strike back, and history shows they rarely hold back. Already, whispers are coming from Beijing and Brussels that countermeasures are on the table. For China, the largest exporter of steel and battery materials to the US, the options are brutally simple: restrict critical minerals like lithium, cobalt, and graphite, the very lifeblood of EV production. Imagine trying to build a single battery pack when your mineral supply is choked off. That's not just a price hike, that's a production freeze. And if Europe joins the chorus, targeting US agriculture or aviation, America's export markets could collapse just as domestic prices are spiking. Think about the chain reaction here: automakers pass costs to consumers, consumers pull back spending, demand shrinks, companies scale down production, and workers start losing jobs. That's not just inflation, that's stagflation, the economic nightmare where prices rise even as growth stalls. And once that cycle begins, it's notoriously hard to break. The US could find itself in a self-inflicted slowdown at the very moment global competitors are racing ahead. But here's the contradiction: policymakers in Washington are calling this a long game. They argue that short-term pain will lead to long-term gain, pushing foreign suppliers out and reviving domestic industry. The problem? The domestic supply chains simply aren't ready. Building mines, factories, and processing plants takes years, sometimes decades. By the time America ramps up, industries could already be hollowed out by cost shocks and consumer backlash. So instead of a clean victory, the US risks being stuck in a trade war with no exit strategy. And here's the twist that almost no one sees coming: the Global South. Nations in Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, many of them key suppliers of raw materials, are being courted aggressively by both China and the EU. If America pushes too hard, those countries may pivot even further toward Beijing, leaving Washington not only isolated but cut off from future supply deals. In other words, the very tariffs meant to strengthen America's bargaining power could actually weaken it on the world stage. So, the big question becomes, will these tariffs force rivals to back down, or are they about to ignite a full-scale economic crossfire that America itself isn't ready to fight? The answer lies in what happens next, and it's unfolding faster than anyone expected. Here's where the tariffs stop being abstract policy and start hitting ordinary Americans in the gut, the checkout line. Because when costs skyrocket for automakers, energy producers, and retailers, they don't absorb it, they push it downstream. Already, analysts are projecting new car prices could rise by $2,000 to $4,000 on average within months. EVs, which Washington has been pushing as affordable alternatives, could actually become luxury products again. And it doesn't stop there. Everything from refrigerators to washing machines to basic packaged goods could see sticker shocks. For families already stretched thin by years of inflation, this isn't just an inconvenience. It's the breaking point. And the timing couldn't be worse. With elections looming, tariffs are becoming political dynamite. On one hand, leaders pitch them as a shield for American jobs. On the other, the average voter is staring at rising grocery bills, car loans, and electricity costs. That disconnect is explosive. Remember, trade wars aren't just fought between nations, they're fought inside ballot boxes. If tariffs trigger inflation, Washington could see a voter backlash powerful enough to flip districts, swing states, and maybe even the White House itself. In other words, this isn't just an economic gamble, it's a political Russian roulette. Here's the contradiction: tariffs are sold as protecting workers. But when companies slash jobs because sales collapse, when factories stall because parts aren't arriving, and when retailers cut back because consumers stop spending, who exactly is being protected? Workers don't see safety, they see pink slips. And voters know it. That's why lobbyists, unions, and corporate executives are already ramping up pressure in DC demanding carve-outs and exemptions. But exemptions are political currency, handed out selectively, often in backroom deals. Which means entire sectors could be sacrificed simply because they don't have enough influence in Washington. And then comes the global perception. Trading partners are watching closely, waiting to see whether America doubles down or cracks under pressure. If the US wavers, softening tariffs after domestic backlash, it sends a signal of weakness. If it holds firm, it risks setting off tit-for-tat escalations that spiral beyond control. Either way, the political costs are mounting, at home and abroad. So, what happens when this trade war stops being about economics and starts being about survival? Survival for politicians, corporations, and even consumers trying to keep their heads above water. That's where the final twist of this story comes in. And here's where it all comes crashing together. America is standing at a crossroads, and the path it chooses could shape the global economy for decades. On one side, the White House insists these tariffs are a bold defense, a strike to reclaim industrial dominance, shield American jobs, and push rivals back on their heels. On the other, the numbers paint a darker picture: higher costs, angry voters, vulnerable industries, and trading partners sharpening their knives for retaliation. It's not just an economic policy anymore, it's a gamble with America's entire future on the line. Because let's be clear, tariffs aren't a switch you can flip on and off. They create ripple effects that last for years. If China retaliates by tightening rare earth exports, if Europe slaps duties on US agriculture or aviation, if consumers pull back and trigger a slowdown, these aren't problems that vanish with a press conference. They're cascading dominoes, and once they start falling, it's almost impossible to stop. America could either emerge stronger from the chaos, or stumble into a spiral that takes down entire sectors of its economy. And here's the contradiction that keeps economists awake at night: tariffs are meant to reduce dependence on foreign nations. But by raising costs and driving trading partners into each other's arms, the US may actually end up more isolated, more dependent, and less competitive. In trying to win the trade war, America could be writing the very script of its own decline. That's not speculation, it's a risk unfolding in real time, with consequences too big to ignore. Meanwhile, Wall Street is jittery, supply chains are rattling, and consumers are bracing. Everyone knows the shockwave is coming, no one knows how big it will be. And in this uncertainty lies the ultimate tension: will tariffs prove to be the weapon that secures America's economic future, or the miscalculation that triggers its undoing? That's the billion-dollar question hanging over every household, every factory, every trading floor. So as this tariff tsunami surges forward, ask yourself, are we witnessing the rebirth of American strength, or the first cracks of a storm that could shatter the global economy? Because one thing is certain, the fallout has only just begun.